Hey there, friend. Welcome back to video number 2 in our launch for the OSR Academy cohort number 3. If you haven't seen video number 1, we talk about leveraging one of the most persuasive sales tools on the planet. That is leveraging testimonials, asking for referrals, and even more importantly, introductions. So we run through that. There was a download available called the Testimonial Tracker, which is a planning accountability device to make sure that we are methodically asking for what we want. And in most cases, we are doing really good work. And someone will say, thank you so much. If I can ever do anything for you, just let me know. And that is an easy opportunity. You'll also see we provided scripts in the newsletter that you can copy and paste on how to ask for referrals and how to ask for testimonials and even an introduction in our newsletter. That's a copy and paste. This has worked for me. It has worked for hundreds of other salespeople. This will work for you. But today we're talking about how do we change behavior? How do we become more persuasive? How do we build a better sales argument? And to do that, we're going to take a step back and we're going to analyze a famous story between Bill Bowerman, who's kind of like the Vince Lombardi of track and field at the University of Oregon, who trained dozens of Olympic athletes and won, I believe, 24 NCAA individual championships. He's a legend. He's also co-founder of what became Nike. And it's this conversation between him and the star pupil, Mr. Steve Prefontaine. There's a couple movies made about his incredible track career and his unfortunate and tragic death. And this story really illustrates how you can build a better argument. Well, Bill Bowerman, he was kind of like James Dyson, like the Dyson vacuum guy who famously made like 5,000 different versions before he finally got it right. Bill Bowerman was always tinkering. He was cobbling his own shoes. He was constantly trying to figure out how to make these shoes lighter. So how did he do this? He tried different fabrics. He tried nylon. He tried rattlesnake. He tried carp. That's right. He would catch fish out of the Mackenzie River and make shoes, track shoes, out of carp skin. Well, many of these fell apart. And when they did, there was spikes on the bottom of them to go in the cinder tracks, and it could injure his athletes. So naturally, many of his runners said, no thanks, I'm not interested. Bill Bowerman finally settled on this combination of nylon and mesh, and he had a shoe that was 50% lighter, from 4 ounces to 2 compared to the Nike that he'd been doing. He wanted Steve Prefontaine to do it because Steve needed to lower his time by 2.5 seconds to break the 4-minute mile mark. So Bowerman presents these new shoes that he cobbled himself to Steve Prefontaine. And Pre says, no thanks, I think they're gonna fall apart. And Bowerman says, they're not gonna fall apart. And Pre says, fine then, you wear them. He says, I'm not gonna wear these. So Bowerman says, I need to think of a different way to persuade Pre to do what is in his best interest, which is something you and I are challenged with all the time. So he said, okay. He goes, Steve, how many strides does it take for you to run the mile? And Steve knows this exactly. He says, 880 strides. He said, okay. And he goes, how much do you weigh? He goes, I weigh 151 pounds. He goes, okay. He goes, theoretically, without losing any strength, could you run the mile faster if you had less weight you were carrying? And Steve kind of sees where he's going. He says, yes, theoretically. He goes, but I don't run in theory. I run in real life. He says, I get it. So he said, okay, 880 strides. Bowerman then calls on his assistant coach and says, Coach D, how many ounces are there in a pound? And he says, 16. He goes, all right, real quick. What's 880 strides divided by 16 ounces in a pound? And the coach then says, that's 55. And he said, okay. He goes, Pre, that means you're carrying an additional 55 pounds over the course of 1 mile, 4 laps around this track. He said, not only that, but these shoes that I'm holding in my hands, they're not 1 ounce lighter. They're 2 ounces lighter. The coach, Coach D, then steps forward and drops 2 55-pound kettlebells on the track and says, Pre, pick them up. So Steve goes over and picks up these 2 55-pound kettlebells, and you can see his trap muscles and his shoulders just rippling, the muscles straining underneath the weight. And he says, do you think that you can run faster with or without those weights. He dropped them and then agreed to wear these shoes that were 2 ounces lighter. Less than a month later, he broke the 4-minute barrier in the mile. And 2 weeks after that, he ran his fastest time ever. Now, what Bowerman did was quantify what was at stake. And when we make better arguments, if we're only doing it emotionally and we're not doing some real simple back of the napkin math to really articulate what is at stake, then you're not being as persuasive as you can be. And what we're talking about is opportunity cost. If you weren't doing this, what could you be doing? Imagine all the rework you have. Let's think about how much that costs. And it's not hard, but we got to quantify the pain. In some cases, we need to quantify the opportunity. If you were to do this and stop doing this, imagine what was in front of you. And Steve Prefontaine immediately felt the additional 110 pounds that he was carrying around over the 4 laps. And that made all the difference. So we shared the story in a little bit more detail, and then we talked to a professional in the construction industry in episode 406, which is coming up soon. So listen to that. You can also go download this when you are working with contractors and subs, and if you are in sales or you are trying to really figure out what's the true cost of rework, you're going to want to download this PDF. We call this the ripple math. Why? Well, when there's a problem, it's like dropping a little pebble into a pond and it ripples out. And there's first order effects and second order effects. It not only affects the subs, it affects your time. It can affect your reputation. There's all sorts of different aspects. And when we think about these, we can then quantify what's at stake. We can quantify the pain, and this is far more persuasive. Why don't more people do this? Because it doesn't come naturally. It's a way of looking at the world. It's a mindset. It's something that we teach in the OSR Academy in every single one of the 4 terms, and it has incredible results. It can make you more persuasive immediately. So go ahead, download this now. Feel free to share this video. And if you haven't watched video 1 and downloaded that testimonial tracker, you can do that as well. And again, these are all tools that are part of our OSR Academy, 12 months, online or off. And that registration will be open in the next video. Thanks for watching.